Good morning, good evening, good afternoon. Paul Andrigo here, Real Estate Podcast Show, and today's going to be a podcast that and the gentleman that's joining me here, he'll tell you. He's going to introduce himself in a minute. But we have been working on this thing for a few years. We're not like necessarily, we don't go way back specifically, but we're sort of connected to people that we both know from many years ago, definitely rugby connections, but we've also got some other connections you guys are going to hear about. So I'm going to do the first thing is and just sort of introduce the gentleman I've got joining me today. Paul, tell everybody who you are if they can't read your shirt clearly.
Thanks, Paul. Well, I'm Paul too, but I'm Paul the English Carpenter. If you can't do clearly, I should have put the new t-shirt on with the new logo. Hasn't changed much, but it's changed to kind of reflect more of what we do. So
yes,
what do? We do a lot of renovations and additions throughout the city. And we also concentrate on historic timber frame structures. That's what you can kind of see in the background. This is my workshop here. I'm just in the office, and I told the guys to step out for a while and go grab a coffee so we can have some peace and quiet in there and do the show. But normally there's a lot of noise happening out there, a lot of sawdust happening out there, and cool things being created.
Amazing. And actually, I wouldn't have been the one to tell anybody to leave. I would almost want to have this so unfiltered and so unscripted that you literally would hear saws and, obviously, the occasional scream.
For sure.
Yeah, that's right. So normally we would have, I don't even have to add sound effects. I know there's obviously a lot of, activity and things that go on back there. So let's do what I like to do, which is sort of have a chronological format to the podcast and sort of just start from the beginning. Let's start about with you, where you were born, and sort of how you got to where you are now. So let's start from the beginning, if you will.
You said we only had 20 minutes.
Well, obviously, again, give me the elevator's pitch version. Yeah.
Good stuff. Well, as the accent may give away, I was born in England many moons ago, and grew up in a small kind of countryside town, and yearned for the big city life. And I didn't really yearn for it. I came on holiday here and saw what it was all about. I was like, okay, I want a piece of this. I want to live in a big city for a couple of years, and then decided I go traveling North America to do the USA, to do Canada, go left, right, up, down, and everything in between. And there was something that just kept bringing me back to Toronto. And I think it was 2008. I had my paperwork together. I applied to come over. And at that time, I mean, saying now, the country was asking for trades. Thankfully, I had carpentry and bricklaying on board, certifications for both. And they snapped me up. And here I am. It wasn't the plan to continue to be a carpenter. It's like, okay, get the foot in the door and kind of see where things go. I've got these skills, but what else can I do? And then, wow, that was 2008. That's
okay.
Where are we now? 2026. And the company's definitely grown and changed and be able to focus on a lot more specialized work and providing our customers with a high level of service than what many others can.
Nice. Okay. Yeah. So again, you haven't been here tremendously long. I would assume that you may have been here longer than that, but obviously somewhere between 2008 and when I met you, obviously we had a connection in common. And again, I still talk about people that are no longer here as if they're here, because for me, obviously being respectful about it and telling stories about people is probably the best way to keep their memories around. So a friend of ours that we have, a friend in common that we have, Jared. So how did you meet Jared? And obviously, again, he sort of is the one that introduced you to me that way. But how did you meet Jared? Was it through Aussie Rules or?
No, it was. I think he was still playing Aussie Rules at the time, but he actually became the physio for the Toronto Buccaneers Rugby Club.
That's right.
And
okay.
You got out training at game days and provide any assistance needed. And I got to know him loosely through that, but then I picked up an injury. So I reached out to him because he had his practice down on, I think it was Yonge Street at the time.
Yeah.
Because obviously him being an osteopath, I figured, okay, well, the team physio, let's go see this guy. And I get over there, get on the flat bench, and I had a thigh injury. Okay, chatting with Jared, he's kind of going through his routine and okay, pulling at the feet, pulling it this way, pulling it that way. Then he's to the shoulders, touches here, touches there. Like, dude, it's my thigh that's the problem. He's like, you have no idea what osteopathy is. Nope. And then work is magic. And still to this day, I'm a big believer in his practice. And in fact, now his old apprentice, a lovely lady by the name of Marinella, I still go to her. She worked with Jared and learned under Jared for many, many years.
Wow. Okay.
And,
wow.
She's still in business and doing great things.
You know what? To me, again, obviously, that's one of the things over the years, and I am, I would say, carelessly loyal in terms of how close, how much I stay with people that I've been with. Obviously, right up until the fact that in some cases, as you may have experienced in life, there's some people that you're not meant to continue doing business with or life with. So those connections you cut off. But for me, obviously, I know for a fact I'd still be, I'd still be doing business with Jared. I'd still be, and again, I was in a different business with him. I was in the gym business with him when I was in that business, and then when I got into real estate in 2000 and beyond, again, he sort of stayed with me on that. And that's to me one of the characteristics of good people is the ones that, obviously, they'd have to, people have to take a risk on everybody. Obviously, they don't know you from anybody in the beginning, but they know who you are as a person. And once you know someone's character and their loyalty, to me, that's something that does transfer. Obviously, everybody gets, a lot of people change jobs and careers. And as you were saying, you didn't necessarily think you'd be doing what you were doing still, but it obviously is a testament to, again, how good you are at it, that you're literally now in the mafia in the sense where you couldn't get out if you wanted to, because you've probably got enough of a business where, starting over is obviously a very daunting thing. So again, that's sort of a, an interesting sort of little side story to go along with what we're talking about today.
And it's truly important for us also, the networks and some of the trades and other people that we've worked with over the years that we're still working with, whether it be plumbers, electricians, architects, engineers, landscapers. I tell a lot of customers, we've kissed a lot of frogs. We've had good plumbers, bad plumbers, but now we've kind of focused on just the quality. These people are quality. I know there's an issue, they're going to come out, they're fairly priced, they're easy to deal with, which is also a major item for me.
Mm-hmm.
And not dealing with the kind of prima donnas. And it just makes the whole project go a lot simpler when you're doing a full build or a renovation. You're handing the keys to these people, either to, I've had them work at my place, I've had them work in customers' homes, and it's a hard thing for a customer to, it's their big investment to hand over that key. See you later. Don't burn the place down. Don't run away with the television. So
absolutely,
it's such an important thing to develop those relationships and maintain them.
Well, you know what? Yeah. And this is again, for me, this is one of those factors. This is one of those characteristics that I've always talked about is I actually, I don't know if I haven't probably spoken to you about it because I've spoken about it on the podcast, but I actually grew up in a construction family. So I was around construction workers, blue collar people, work construction. Obviously, I was pushing wheelbarrows before I was lifting weights. And if you've ever pushed, and you probably have, you ever pushed a wheelbarrow full of cement, you'll know no amount of strength training will prepare you for that. It's a combination of balance, obviously, yes, strength, and obviously a lot of fearlessness as well with certain parts of the job. But the one thing I like doing is again, I'm very specific about who I work with, and having you on the show for me was important because what I want people to be able to learn are the rules that you would use if you were the homeowner, and you have to basically jump into their skin for a minute anyways when you're working with them. But for you now, if you weren't doing what you're doing, but of course you had all the knowledge you do, what recommendations, sort of, what advice, Paul, would you give, again, the homeowner that's listening that is thinking about doing, whether it's a minor, not minor, but let's say a bathroom or a kitchen or something obviously bigger. And I know you've done, some major things. You've probably done additions. You've probably done all this stuff, especially now people talking about, adding another level, doing a garden suite, whatever. So from a standpoint of caution, how would you approach the process of selecting someone to, again, work for you? What would you say to people out there? What advice would you give someone that, that you cared about, that, if they're looking, and if you weren't able to help them, let's say it was a friend of yours out of town or something?
Experience. How much experience do you have? You may well have gone through carpentry school, but that's kind of like taking your driver's license. You learn a lot more. So it's that kind of experience. How many years have you been doing it for? Are you established? Have you done this before?
Yeah.
We're doing the same thing over and over again, but every project's different. Every single project's different. So, you may have built 1,000 walls, hung 100 doors, but depending on what job you're coming to, it may not be the same situation. So what's your experience in working in homes? And certainly a lot of the historical homes, a lot of the properties we work on have in the west end of the city, big kind of established turn of the century homes. Not the turn of this century, the turn of the last one, which So how much experience you've had working with these, what you're used to seeing in these items, because you get any renovation, you got to find some problems, hands down. It might be small, it might be large, but it's like, okay, are you equipped to deal with these problems? Maybe when I first started the business back in 2008, and I was taking on those kind of smaller jobs, certainly didn't have the experience and knowledge that I have now. And thankfully that's come from ongoing education, put myself on courses, learning, working with other trades. And the type of, I wouldn't be able to do then what I'm doing now.
Okay.
A steep climb for sure.
Yeah.
And honestly, the things that I'm kind of doing now probably wouldn't have interested me back in the day. It's a lot more kind of, especially the timbers, it's very, very kind of detail orientated. It's finishing carpentry and framing carpentry at the same time. Everything's going to be on display. So that'd be my biggest advice. Experience, and are you established?
Yeah.
How many times have you done this? And then see examples of the work. If you're proud of your work, then and close the project out well. Most customers are more than happy to show off what you've done. Do you have a portfolio? I did an Instagram reel not too long ago. I'm looking for the booklet here, but back in the day, I'd go out with this binder and I'd flick through and have photos from my previous jobs. It would have my qualifications. It would have my WSIB, the insurance policy, all those kind of ticks in the boxes that you need, and which are great and easy to get. And I'll stress that just because they've got their WSIB, just because they've got their insurance, doesn't necessarily mean they're going to be perfect to do the job. Yeah, sure, you need those things, but they're a lot easier to get than the experience of being on the tools is. You need that time on the tools to gain the experience.
Yeah. So what again, the only thing that I add, and this is something I'm extremely cautious about, because I've had clients of mine go through horror stories, some of which I've talked about on the podcast. One of the things I actually have said to people, and this is something we're doing right now anyways, is to spend a certain amount of time with someone that you're going to hire. And to me, that includes listening to a podcast of them speaking in a normal fashion, not in a scripted way, not in a, I didn't send you, and you can put your hand on the Bible if you want. I didn't send you any questions to ask. I didn't send you any questions or answers that I wanted you to give me or to tell me. But the fact is, the way people handle, the way people are in real life, and if you're going to be dealing with someone, I always say that, and this is sort of my pessimistic side, or maybe just realistic, because I've been doing this for so long. I've been in sales for what feels like hundreds of years. Money changes people. So when it comes down to it, obviously, and you're dealing with, having to, tell someone that, of course, that there's, additional issues. And of course, along with that, there's potentially additional costs. It's a good thing for those people to understand that you're going to want to make sure that you're working with someone who can, sort of empathize with you and obviously sort of walk you through this again, as if it's the first time, not just another job. It's for someone, it's their first ever kitchen renovation. For someone else, it's their first ever, basement renovation. So a lot of them are not going to be, a lot of people are not going to have the, what would you call it? I guess just the stomach in some cases for what a renovation can involve, as you know, and as you've said to me, if you're dealing with a house that's got 100 and I forget which one, but I remember an inspector telling me is just basically remember 100-year-old house has 100-year-old problems. Obviously, it's not biologically, the house is probably updated at some point. Hopefully the kitchen is post 1980, but that's not always true. That's there's plenty of places for sale right now that have a 1950s kitchen, literally like a time capsule house. But the fact is, again, people with older homes, people doing renovations, that's why I wanted you here, Paul, just to be able to explain that, again, surprises. And of course, as the saying goes, shit happens. Things come up.
Indeed, it does.
Yes. Yeah.
A renovation, like you said, it's a stressful process for homeowners. They're not going to be living in their home. This may go on for 6, 12, 18 months, depending on what type of project you're doing. Now, the kitchen and bathroom shouldn't take that long, but the big projects do, and takes you through the seasons. And it's maintaining that relationship. It's like, okay, just like all relationships, it takes work. It's like, okay, before you engage in that contract, it's a two-way thing. Okay, can I work for you and can I work with you? Because there's definitely been some jobs out there that I've looked at where it's like, we can do these, but I'm not sure I can handle 6 months of working with you. And I'm sure I've lost projects because people didn't want to work with me. It goes ways. So that's also an important thing. People may have all the ticks.
Honesty is a very expensive gift. And I don't know who said the quote, but I've lived it because I've told people before, I'm sorry, you're not going to get 3 million. The most your house is worth is 2.6. And at that point, my honesty gets me shown to the door. Or I'll talk about a renovation they did that was just not really up to speed. It was very cheaply done. We're talking about, like dollar store click floors in a property that was probably, 2 million plus. Just things like that I'll be very direct about. And again, I know I've lost a lot of business, but the business I've got along the way from people who trust my opinion and don't fire me for honesty, those are the ones that I've worked with, many, many times over and over. Those usually make up for the ones that, of course, discarded me along the way. So I'm glad that you're the way you are, Paul. And that's the one thing about, for me, being in any sort of conversation or collaborating with, even on podcasts with people that are, from sports backgrounds that have discipline sort of built in. It's good that you are able to discipline yourself to be that way, because again, you could say what people want to hear, but you probably won't last doing that.
Very true. Very true.
Yeah. So I think we sort of talked about the progression. So obviously where you were from, how you got here. And I guess the only thing I like to sort of include in our conversation, of course, these conversations, and I'm very upfront about this. I always want this to be a beginning of a conversation with, someone listening. So those of you who are listening, who've heard Paul and maybe you've got a renovation in mind. Obviously I want you to be able to include him, in your discussions. But what for you, how does the future look for you as far as the contracting world, renovations, things like that for you? Any sort of what do you call it? Any sort of crystal ball of how things are going to be looking in the next 5 or 10 years in your world?
Honestly, people, some need to update, some want to update. Many people move in to their home and it may suit them for a few years, and then suddenly life changes. Maybe it's kids, maybe kids come into the picture, maybe kids move out of the picture and you don't need that big space anymore, and you want to find ways to kind of reconfigure items. There's always going to be a need for housing, and there's always going to be a need to update housing, just like anything. Whether it's a piece of equipment, eventually it's going to start to fail. It needs maintenance along the way, and then it needs to be fixed or a new one bought. So I don't see renovations and additions, that side of the business, going anywhere. I do see starting to get a lot more kind of demand for the timber work, which is super exciting.
Interesting.
Okay. Kind of craftsmanship, and these are kind of feature products. Maybe it's portico, maybe it's a carport, a garage, because everything's on display, and it's kind of a more of a feature. We're not building full homes out of the timber frames, certainly not in the city. Some companies up north certainly do that, but for us, they're more kind of features, and I find that super fun because it's definitely a more controlled environment. The wood turns up here, gets loaded in, we kind of clean it up and make shapes out of it, put it together, disassemble it, and then bring it to the customer's house, or even to their business, and put these things together. And it's started to be, there is and there has been a massive resurgence in working with wood, especially big wood like the stuff you see behind me, the Douglas firs. It just creates that sense of warmth and stability. And going back to something established. We did this hundreds and hundreds of years, and then we stopped doing it, and now we're going back to it again.
Well, obviously, I think it's a sort of a testament to the fact that, again, there's certain things about, there's certain things that are classic. There's certain things that people feel like, that embodies luxury to them. And it doesn't necessarily mean that it's going to be one person's luxury is the same as another's. There's certain things that I've found over the years, just having and I haven't had one for a while, but having a house with a wood fireplace doesn't mean anything to some people, but for me that sort of is, there's a luxury to it. There's a smell from that your fireplace that you smell outside. There's all sorts of, again, interior things that people love for their kitchens, and I get to see them every day. Sometimes I'm so jealous that I don't have those features, but sometimes it's even as simple as, Paul, one of my favorite things of all time, the laundry chute. It's not something that you probably hear people say, I wish I had one, but once you have kids and once you're in a position where you've dragged just monstrous amounts of laundry up and down 3 flights of stairs, you know what? I'll go into a house and I'll see one of the old-fashioned laundry chutes. I'm like, that's brilliant. It's 100 years old. And it's still in some houses in the beach area. They still have them in place.
One that's up the beach, a renovation we did maybe 10 years ago. It's the only laundry chute I've ever built, and probably some of the best clients I ever had as well. Some great clients there. So, you want a laundry chute? Why do you want a laundry chute? Well, the laundry was down in the basement. It made perfect sense.
Trust me, if you've ever had an uncomfortable position where, again, obviously, you've got so much laundry and it's going up and down, and you're constantly dragging it from one to the other. It's this little, again, it's a luxury. It might not be on anybody's list of luxuries, but again, mine is different. Yours might have certain things on it, and someone listening might have their own list of their favorite things. So thank you so much, Paul. I really appreciate you taking the time. I know how busy you are, and we took a little while. Hopefully it'll be less than 5 years before we do the next thing. But thank you so much for joining me. Any sort of parting words, anything you want to let people know about, besides how to reach you, for example, what areas that you guys cover, anything like that you want to add?
So we've got the workshop here in Etobicoke, which is kind of now the central base, so very, very loosely, a lot of the renovation and addition projects, just because, as you know, driving around the city is a real kind of pain. I've kept everything kind of loosely from Ronseal to the 427 south of Eglinton, just so I can get to sites when there's issues. Most of my days start at the job sites, and then I can come here and work on the timbers and other things. So I don't want to be driving around constantly. So renovations and additions, west end of the city, then the timber work, we can build it in-house and deliver it to anywhere, literally anywhere. The sunnier the better.
Awesome.
all over the GTA, all over the province if required.
Okay, excellent. And what would be the fastest or best way to reach you? Email, website, and phone? What's best?
On the website, there's the contact form there. Fill it out, and either myself or my office manager would be sure to get back in touch with you.
Awesome. Thank you again, Paul. Really appreciate having you here. Thank you for obviously letting me get into a little bit of your past, and of course I'm glad we sort of talked about our connections, but for me this is all the reason why it's just for me the reason why podcasting has such an important place in the world, because again, you could do all the ads you want. You could do 1,000 ads and send them out to a bunch of different media, but they might not ever hear your voice in those ads. They might not ever hear a story like the ones we told. It just makes it a bit more real. So for me anyways, I've always found that this is a really great way for me to share stories and to introduce people to, again, people I've worked with, people I know in the business, and people that I cross with, people, like other businesses that I cross over with. So thanks again for your time, Paul. Really appreciate you joining me on the podcast.